go.
Okay. In 2011, we had two unfortunate incidents by grizzly bears. So we're trying to beef up our bear safety information that we pass on to our park visitors to try to keep everyone safe. I'm going to start with an update about the grizzly bear population in Yellowstone National Park and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. In the 50s through the 1970s, when the Craighead Brothers were studying grizzly bears here, they estimated the population of approximately 12 grizzly bears. By 1974, population was down to an estimated 136 bears. And then in 1975, grizzly bears were listed as a threatened species. In 2012, our current population estimate there. Sorry about that. Our 2012 population estimate is 610 bears using the population census method that was used in the last couple decades. That is a very conservative census method designed for when we're at a low number of bears, a low density of bears in the ecosystem, and it gave a pretty accurate population estimate for a low density of bears and guaranteed that we didn't overestimate the size of the population. Since then, at Montana State, they developed a new census method that gives a more accurate population estimate for populations when they're at higher densities, when bears are packed in there a lot tighter. And so, using the old method, our estimate for 2012 was 610 bears. Using the new method, which gives a more accurate estimate for bears at this density, is 718 bears in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, with a range of 640 to 797. So we've seen significant population growth since 1974, when bears were listed as a threatened species. This shows the trend over time. In the late 60s and early 70s, all the dumps, both in Yellowstone National Park and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, where bears aggregated, were closed, and the population declined pretty significantly after that due to human-caused mortality. The population continued to decline through the late 70s and into the early 80s. But by 1983, we were seeing population growth, pretty significant growth, a rate of about 4 to 7% per year, as you can see in this graph. And then in recent years, it's starting to level off a little bit. So we believe we're reaching ecological carrying capacity in Yellowstone National Park and the recovery zone, basically food-based and bear social behavior-based population limits. But outside the park, we're reaching human social limits where there's higher mortality outside the recovery zone. So what we're seeing is the rate of increase in the population is slowly starting to taper off now as we're reaching that carrying capacity. This map shows Yellowstone National Park. The light blue line in the center, that's the park boundary. The black line is the recovery zone that the Fish and Wildlife Service established in 1975 as the area they wanted to recover a viable grizzly bear population. And the blue line is the area currently occupied by grizzly bears. So you can see areas well beyond the recovery zone are now occupied, and we're continuing to get expansion. We're getting quite a bit of expansion of bears down into the Wind River Range. We're also getting bears down into the Wyoming Range, and then also north of the park and well east of the park, and really out on the plains almost. So we've seen significant population growth. In the 1970s, when the bear was listed as a threatened species, there was bears occupied almost 6,000 square miles. In the 1980s, it increased to about 6,500 square miles. 1990s, we were up over 13,000 square miles. Early 2000s, we were over 14,000 square miles. And since 2010 now, bears are occupying over 19,000 square miles. So we've seen significant population range increase. Bears are reoccupying areas where they haven't been for 100 years or more. We've seen real good cub production, both in Yellowstone National Park and the ecosystem. So since 1997, in Yellowstone National Park, we've produced 427 grizzly bear cubs. In that same time period, we've only had 15 human-caused mortalities, 7 road kills, and 8 management removals. So our cub production is significantly outpacing our human-caused mortality, and that's one of the things driving this range expansion and population increase. These cubs then, as some adults, they disperse out and begin reoccupying new areas. There's been a lot in the newspapers about whitebark pine. We have a couple things affecting whitebark here. The biggest is mountain pine beetle. It's caused a lot of mortality of whitebark pine in recent years. We also have white pine blister rust, which is an exotic fungus that's come in from Europe that kills some whitebark trees. The mortality from blister rust is not nearly as significant in this ecosystem as mountain pine beetle is. Mountain pine beetle happens to be a native beetle where we get periodic outbreaks in this ecosystem. We have 10 transects located throughout the park that we monitor every year for pine production. And on our 10 transects, the mortality from mountain pine beetle has really tapered off the last 2 years. So we think that the big epidemic of mountain pine beetle is starting to subside at this point. There's also a lot of newspapers about how grizzly bears can't survive without whitebark. Whitebark is a really good food for bears. It's a high source of protein and fat, so it's a good pre-hibernation food source for bears to put on fat prior to hibernating. But we've been looking at all the data. It's really hard to determine the effects that this high whitebark pine mortality has had on bears, because bears are an omnivore generalist. They eat a lot of different things. We've documented 234 species that grizzly bears eat in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So it's really hard to tease out how loss of one food affects bears when they have 233 other foods to fall back on. And we still have whitebark out there. In the fall, last year for instance, was a good whitebark co-production year, and all our bears moved up into high elevation and were feeding on whitebark. So there's still enough whitebark out there that bears are finding it and eating it. Yellowstone cutthroat trout is another good food source for bears that has declined significantly in recent years due to the introduction of exotic lake trout in Yellowstone Lake. And we recently completed a study using GPS satellite collars on bears around Yellowstone Lake to see what they're feeding on now that cutthroat trout are no longer significant food. Basically, cutthroat trout, they leave Yellowstone Lake up these little tributary streams to spawn, and bears prey on them in these tributary streams during the spring. And Clear Creek, for example, one spawning stream on Yellowstone Lake, at its peak had over 70,000 spawners moving up that creek each summer to spawn. In recent years, Clear Creek has had less than 500 spawners moving up. So it shows you the dramatic decline in cutthroat trout. And so we put GPS satellite collars on bears around the lake and looked at what they're feeding on. And the main food source that they've switched to, that happens to occur about the same time that they used to prey on cutthroat trout, is elk calves. Now the bears around Yellowstone Lake are preying on elk calves during that season when they used to prey on cutthroat trout. Meat is a very big food source in this ecosystem. Not only do they prey on elk calves in the spring, they also clean up wolf-killed elk and bison carcasses, as well as bison carcasses dying during the rut, and spring winter kill as well. So looking at how management is going in the park, this graph shows property damages caused by bears. We had pretty significant property damages early history of the park, the 30s through the 60s, averaged 138 property damages per year. 1970, when we implemented our new bear management program, it significantly reduced property damages to 46 per year. By the 80s, it had declined to 20 per year. In the 1990s, we averaged only 10 per year. And since 2000, we've seen a little bit of an increase to an average of 14 property damages per year. But visitation of the park has increased each decade as well, and we're currently averaging over 3.6 million visitors. We've seen the same trend with bear attacks, bear-inflicted human injuries. So we were averaging 48 bear maulings per year from the 30s through the 60s. After implementing our new bear management program, where we try to prevent bears from getting conditioned to human foods, we've had great success at reducing the number of injuries. We've dropped to just 6 per year in the decade of the 70s, 2 per year in the 80s, and since 1990, we've averaged only 1 bear attack per year in the park. Once we solved the problems with food-conditioned bears, prevented bears from getting human food handouts and garbage. Not only did it significantly reduce the number of injuries, it changed the type of injuries. So when we were averaging 48 injuries per year, those were typically bears being aggressive, trying to get people's food. Since 1990 now, the 1 injury per year that we average is typically a bear reacting defensively to a surprise encounter. So bears are now hurting people when they feel threatened by those people, rather than coming in and trying to get people's food. I should point out that last year we didn't have any bear attacks. So to keep our average of 1, we should have 2 this year. So you guys want to be extra safe out there. Our biggest management challenge today now, the foundation of our program is preventing bears from getting human food. And we've had great success with that. And just when we thought all our problems were solved, a new issue kind of arose, and that is habituated bears. So with 3.6 million visitors, if a bear runs every time it sees a person, it spends its whole summer running. So bears, they're highly intelligent, they're very adaptable. They learn that all these tourists are just kind of benign background noise. And so they'll habituate to people, feed on native foods next to the roads and the meadows, with hundreds of people standing there watching and taking photographs. It's our biggest management challenge now because of the big traffic jams it creates. And then people still do some silly things. We had a guy walk up and try to pet a cub a number of years ago. We always try to keep a ranger present so people don't throw food to these bears and get them conditioned to human foods. But this shows since 1990 the number of bear jams in the park. You see a pretty significant increase. And at the same time, our bear population has been increasing and participation is increasing. So this is our biggest bear management challenge today, trying to educate people on how to behave around a bear that's feeding on native foods in the meadow. Just yesterday at Norris, we had a female grizzly with cubs out, 2 cubs in the year. One tourist was up about 10 yards from this bear taking pictures, and when my staff told him he needed to get back 100 yards, he said, "I have my bear spray." So he thought it was okay to be that close because he had bear spray. So we need to educate people just about the etiquette of viewing and photographing bears. That they still need to respect that bear and keep a safe distance, both for the bear's protection and their own protection. Visitation, we've set new records for visitation. Each of the last 3 years are the highest 3 years for visitation ever. We're up over well over 3.5 million visitors a year now. So it's just a big challenge to try to monitor these large numbers of visitors that are, they really love bears, love to see bears, love to view and photograph bears. But we're trying to do a better job of educating those large numbers of people on proper bear viewing behavior. Now I'm going to go into safety information. In 2011, as I stated earlier, we had 2 people killed by grizzly bears in Yellowstone National Park. So we have really re-examined our safety messaging and how we deliver those messages to the public. We're trying to get everybody, not only in Yellowstone National Park, but in Grand Teton and throughout the ecosystem, giving the same safety messages to make it easier for visitors to understand when they move from one park to the next or to the national forest. We rely mainly on voluntary compliance with our bear safety messages. So we put the messages out there, and then we hope that the public follows those messages. But we realize we haven't been having really great success with that. We recommend that everybody going into the backcountry hike in parties of at least 3 or more people, because those bigger groups are almost never attacked by bears. Yet the average, the most common party sizes in Yellowstone National Park are 1 and 2 people. We've also, for over a decade now, really been promoting the use of bear spray, because it's over 92% effective at stopping aggressive behavior in bears. And yet, when we did a survey the last couple of years, only 16% of day hikers in Yellowstone Park were carrying bear spray. So the remaining hikers were using some other method to diffuse confrontations with bears. So again, we're trying to get this message out that bear spray, it really works, and that people should carry it when they're hiking in bear country. So a lot of people, they believe that bears are these ferocious creatures lurking in the woods, stalking, killing, and eating people. And then a lot of other people believe that bears are these cute, smiling creatures that are always happy and would never hurt anybody. And the truth is really somewhere in the middle. Bears certainly have the jaws and the claws to do considerable damage to people. Fortunately for us, usually they use a lot of behavioral cues to actually to try to avoid actual contact and confrontation. When we look at all the injuries in Yellowstone National Park, since 1990, 85% of them were caused by grizzly bears. So grizzly bears are really the species you got to watch out the most for here in the park. So it's important to know how to distinguish between a black bear and a grizzly bear, the two species of bears we have in the park. Some of the basics, black bears have these larger, more oval-shaped ears. The rump is the highest point on the back on a black bear. They have a straight nose profile. The nose is usually a light brown or tan in color, although occasionally you'll get a black bear that the nose is the same color as the rest of the body. And then black bears have these short, tightly curved claws that have evolved for efficiently climbing trees. The claws on a black bear are generally dark in color. And if you're close enough to see the claws, you're probably too close. Grizzly bears, the most distinguishing field characteristic is this large muscle mass over the shoulders. Grizzly bears have evolved for digging foods from the soil, small mammal caches, roots, that type of thing. And so they've evolved this large muscle mass over the shoulders. That's the highest point on the back. Grizzly bears have shorter, more rounded ears than black bears. They have more of a dish-shaped or concave nose profile. And they have these long, finger-like claws that are generally light in color, that have evolved again from digging in the soil, digging up roots, digging up small mammals, and small mammal caches. You gotta remember, when a black bear has his head down grazing, you'll get kind of the appearance of a shoulder hump. But if that bear lifts his head up straight, the top of the back there is going to be flat. The rump is the highest point on the back. Color is not a good thing to distinguish between black bears and grizzly bears. Not all black bears are black. Some black bears can be black or white. They can be brown, blonde, cinnamon, a lot of different color phases. Grizzly bears also come in a lot of different colors: black, chocolate brown, blonde, light brown. If we look at everybody that's been injured in Yellowstone National Park in the backcountry since 1970, 95% of the people were hiking, and only 5% were in backcountry campsites. So you're actually safer once you make it to your campsite than you are when you're hiking to get to your campsite. Again, that's because almost all our attacks are these surprise encounters, and those occur when people are out active and hiking. So most of bear safety really is preventing surprise encounters from happening. I have a hard time getting people to work for me to make a post with pictures like this. So some of the things you can do to prevent having a surprise encounter is you want to hike in groups of 3 or more people. You want to stay on designated trails as much as possible. Bears get used to running into people on designated trails. You want to avoid hiking at dawn, dusk, or at night. That's when grizzly bears are most active. Trail running is really becoming popular in this ecosystem. Trail running is not a real smart thing to do in high-density grizzly bear areas. You're moving along fast and quiet. You're usually not being really alert looking around, and so it's a good way to surprise them. You want to stay alert. A lot of people nowadays hike with music headphones. And you're not really going to be alert if you're just walking along listening to music. Then you want to make noise in blind spots and carry bear spray. Hiking in large groups, what it does, number one is the bigger the group, the more likely that somebody in the group is going to be a talker and making noise. So the bear's going to hear people before surprising. It's also more likely that a bigger group is going to have at least one alert person in it who's going to see the bear before you step on it. And then large groups are more intimidating to bears. And the big thing is, if you're hiking in a group, you got to stay together in a group. You can't all be spread out half a mile apart. So hike at the pace of your slowest hiker, and that way you're all bunched up, and that'll really reduce the risk of bear attack. When we look at everybody injured in the park since 1970, Over half, 51%, were hiking by themselves. 42% of the people attacked were in a group of 2 people. Only 7% were in a group of 3 or 4 people. We've had no attacks on groups of 5 or more people. So if you can find at least 2 hiking partners, 4 is better, you can greatly reduce the risk of bear attack. Again, staying alert is important. If you're not paying attention, you might not see the bear right there in the center of the picture. You might hike right down into it. Carry bear spray. It's relatively cheap. It's cheaper than a tank of gas. It's relatively lightweight, and it's highly effective, over 92%. So if you have a surprise encounter with a bear, you want to appear non-threatening. I always kind of look slightly away down at the ground. I talk to the bear in a calm voice. It seems to help. I don't know if it's actually helping the bear, if it's just helping to keep me calm, but I always do it, and I've never been mauled. So, and then you want to immediately increase your distance, which means slowly back away, don't run. Our bears here run down elk calves all the time. They're faster than Olympic sprinters. I don't know if there's anyone in this room who's faster than an Olympic sprinter. Bears are faster than Olympic sprinters on steroids, so you're not going to outrun a bear. So you want to increase your distance, slowly start backing away, and most of the time, that alone will diffuse the situation. And as you're backing away, you pull out your bear pepper spray and have it ready to use. The big thing is do not run. You don't know if you're a runner or a stander until it happens. About 10 years ago, I had a new crew. I was out in Hayden Valley. We came over a hill. There was a sow with cubs about 20 yards away. I was slowly backing away. When I looked over my shoulder, my crew was... Sometimes you can run away and get away, but it's just because the bear decides to let you. A lot of times running will trigger a chase response. So once you've had that encounter, you've tried backing away, then if the bear charges, then you start having some decisions to make. And it's really important to understand bear behavior. Again, most of the time, over 99% of our attacks in Yellowstone Park, it's a surprise encounter, and the bear's reacting defensively. So this is defensive aggression. The bear's not trying to kill and eat you for lunch. So those defensive reactions are the most common. Curious and predatory attacks are extremely rare, but if you happen to be unlucky when one of those happens to, you want to react the right way. So how do you recognize a defensive attack? Anytime you have a sudden surprise encounter, you can assume that that's a defensive attack or a defensive reaction from the bear if it charges. If the bear hop charges at you, clacks its teeth, sticks out its lips, huffs, woofs, barks, slaps its paw to the ground, rushes towards you, then stops, those are all warnings that you're too close. You want to heed those warnings and back off. If those warnings precede an attack, again, you can assume it's a defensive aggression, and you want to react accordingly. In a defensive attack, the bear's going to charge, usually almost immediately. The head's going to be low, the ears are going to be pinned back. That right there is the key for a defensive reaction. A bear that stands up on its hind legs, that's more of a curious behavior. It's trying to gather more information, determine what you are, what your intentions are, and then it's going to decide what to do. It might drop down and go back to feeding. It might drop down and run away. It might drop down and charge. But that standing up is a curious information gathering position, not an aggressive position. So if you have a surprise encounter, the bear charges, the head is down, the ears are pinned back, then you want to stop backing away, stand your ground. Most of the time, if you stand your ground, the bear's going to veer off or stop in front of you and put on a vicious display, slap the ground, woof, jut out its lips, might start salivating heavily. The big thing is do not run, use your pepper spray. If a defensive bear charges, you stop and stand your ground, it follows through with the attack, then that's the point where you be passive and play dead. You want to remain still and wait for the bear to leave before you get up. And how we recommend playing dead, lying flat on your stomach, put your hands behind your head so your elbows are out, protecting the sides of your face. Leave your pack on. We've had a lot of people in recent years, their pack gets bit, their pack gets swatted, they end up with no injuries, their pack protected their back. You want to play dead only at the last moment. I had a couple guys come into my office about a few years ago. These 3 guys, they were hiking. The trail popped out of the forest into a meadow, and like 60, 70 yards away, there's a big grizzly bear eating roots. They see the bear looks up, sees them. The bear doesn't do anything aggressive. And they're like, the only thing we remember to do was play dead, so they all just flop down. The bear's probably thinking, why did these three people just winter kill out there? The bear actually walked up and circled them and then left. They were scared to death, but they were unhurt. But playing dead is for that last nanosecond before the bear hits you. When there's a bear on the other side of the meadow, you just don't lay down and play dead. You want to wait till the bear does show some signs of aggression first. Of those that played dead during these surprise encounters, where the bear was showing defensive aggression, 75% received only very minor injuries. Since 1970, of the people that fought back during a surprise encounter where the bear was showing defensive aggression, those that fought back, 80% received severe injuries. So playing dead can really reduce your injuries, and we've been very successful with park visitors doing that. You also, this is extremely rare, and you really want to remember how to react to that surprise encounter with defensive aggression. But in the back of your mind, you should realize that 0.01% of the time, a bear might be curious, and if you behave wrong, it could change into predation. So predatory bears don't give warning signals. So there's no threat displays, there's no barking, jaw popping, hop charging, bluff charging, ground slapping, false charges. There's none of that. A predatory bear is just going to bear in on you because he's thinking of you as a source of prey, a source of food. So a curious or predatory bear is going to approach with its head up and its ears erect. Unlike a defensive bear during a surprise encounter, which is going to charge with its head held low and the ears pinned back. So if you have a bear walking in on you like this is a curious bear. If you behave wrong, you might end up looking like prey to that bear. So with a curious bear, you want to be aggressive, stand your ground, throw rocks and sticks, be aggressive, and if a predatory bear attacks, you want to fight back, the exact opposite that you would do with a defensive bear. So a predatory bear, you're going to be able to tell that it's keenly interested in you. It's going to keep walking in on you, keep bearing in. It's going to be visually locked on you. There's actually been cases in Canada where black bears were after people's kids and stuff, and the adults were beating on the bear and everything, and it was just visually locked in on those kids and was after him. There's a case up in Glacier where